There is no man who inspires less respect in the entire world of football than Gianni Infantino, the disgraceful president of FIFA, who dug his own grave with countless scandals during the World Cup, ultimately sealing his own doom right after. Secret plans were leaked to privatize the World Cup and hand over the keys of global football directly to the family of Donald Trump. This bombshell news instantly sparked the absolute fury of UEFA, an organization that will not rest until they have his head. But even though FIFA waved a white flag of peace in a brief hollow statement where they supposedly recognized their own errors, so to speak, while offering their total backing to their under-fire president, this war is far from over, because far away from Switzerland, a massive, powerful alliance is forming, ready to go to the absolute limit. CONCACAF, completely leaving out the corrupt federation controlled by Gianni Azcárraga. The AFC and UEFA have declared war on Infantino. They openly questioned his honor and basic honesty to lead FIFA, demanding that he step down from the presidency immediately after completely destroying all trust through a web of lies, manipulation, and backroom bribes. But we must ask, what motive drives them to this extreme? That is exactly what we will uncover here. On the flip side, Infantino is not fighting this alone, and this massive scandal has exposed those willing to sell their souls just to keep lining their pockets as part of his inner circle. CONMEBOL, along with certain key federations like the one in Argentina, which proved to be more of a shameless brown-noser than an adult film star, joined by the Mexican Football Federation, which is solely responsible for managing the lucrative football business of Televisa before FIFA, and along with it, all their low-rate mouthpieces, who do not even know how to defend the pathetic, decaying image of their boss's business anymore. These are just a few of the massive storylines we are breaking down today. Make sure to stay tuned because this rabbit hole gets incredibly deep, dark, and messy, dragging down those who have caused so much damage to Mexican football, like Televisa, Emilio Azcárraga, and other desperate figures desperately clinging to a sinking ship as their business fails. But who will actually win this war? Can FIFA bring down the most powerful association in world football? Let us take a look. This is the brutal no-holds-barred war between FIFA and UEFA. Televisa and Azcárraga should tremble. You are in for a ride. Far from Switzerland, a powerful front is working to force Gianni Infantino to resign from the FIFA presidency before the upcoming elections in March 2027. The powerhouse UEFA, the Asian Confederation, and CONCACAF, excluding Mexico, meaning without Televisa, who is currently locked in a bitter feud with their confederation president, Victor Montagliani, over the highly lucrative broadcasting rights sold to Netflix for the Gold Cup and the Nations League, dealing a massive blow to Televisa's monopoly and turning their own game completely against them. A fascinating drama that we will dive into a bit later. They have all joined forces to politely demand, if you can call it polite, that Infantino step down after shattering their trust with constant lies. Right after major global media outlets exposed his secret blueprint to privatize the World Cup. Even though FIFA has been desperately apologizing after a small, hand-picked summit in Morocco, which was only attended by sycophants who favor the bald-headed president, trying to bury the entire issue in a frantic bid to move on, claiming they will no longer tolerate any further attacks on their integrity and good governance. They still failed to calm the storm among their federations and the nearly 200 member associations who chose to stand up for the game and are fully prepared to launch a massive boycott as a final desperate measure to strip him of his power. The latest major reports from Bloomberg indicate that UEFA, CONCACAF, and the AFC have started talks to create a tournament completely independent of FIFA during international breaks while this entire messy situation gets sorted out. We must remember that the European football associations had already warned Infantino that none of their teams would participate in any FIFA competition if he pushed forward with privatization. But why is there a sudden alliance between these federations? What agendas do they have to depose Infantino beyond saving the sport? Well, with everything burning, British outlet TalkSport reports that Victor Montagliani, the current president of CONCACAF, who was previously accused by Canadian female players of covering up serious allegations of misconduct and abuse during his time heading the Canadian Soccer Federation, is already actively weighing a potential run for the FIFA presidency, whether in the next election or following an early resignation, even if this was never officially confirmed by those close to him. Meanwhile, UEFA, which is easily the most powerful confederation on the planet, has absolutely no intention of letting go of its grip. Everyone knows football is a massive business, and Europe is its absolute beating heart. To put it bluntly, they own the entire global market. It is so dominant that everything, literally everything, is valued in euros instead of dollars. By forcing transactions in their own currency, they directly challenge the financial supremacy of the United States. That keeps the massive cash flow running directly through their own system, which only makes the domestic leagues across the European continent much stronger and wealthier. And let us not even mention their national teams, which are easily the most dominant in the entire world. When they threatened to pull all of their member nations from any FIFA competition, Gianni Infantino was absolutely shaking in his boots. But let me ask you this again. How does approving this investment fund actually change things? Well, with privatization, Infantino is practically handing control of the beautiful game over to the Americans on a silver platter. The center of the market would shift completely to the United States. That is bad news for UEFA, and honestly, bad for the sport itself, because the Americans would suddenly have the power to rewrite all the rules. We already caught a glimpse during the World Cup when we warned you about those corporate hydration breaks being nothing more than a cheap commercial opportunity for major TV networks and the American sports establishment. Football would be chopped up into a four-quarter American-style broadcast, allowing greedy television networks to jam in endless commercial breaks and rake in billions of dollars in pure profit. But that is not even the worst part of it. The dirtiest detail is that the independent confederations would be reduced to mere corporate employees with zero real authority, completely destroying the entire institutional structure of global football. Those were the grand plans of Fifantino, my friend, cooked up with his loyal puppets like Colo Azcárraga, who desperately needed to cash in and get the World Cup sold. We have to remember that this exact modus operandi is exactly what Colo Azcárraga tried to pull off over in Mexico, importing a massive multi-million-dollar investment fund to treat all of the other clubs like his personal submissive employees, while positioning himself as the primary shareholder and sole winner of a game rigged entirely against everyone else. It did not work in Mexico, but now FIFA tried to force the exact same blueprint. We strongly suspect that Colo Azcárraga already knew exactly what was coming down the pipeline because he was in constant, highly confidential communication with Infantino. Yes, he already had the inside scoop on the whole thing. That is why he tried to push it in his own league first, but the plan collapsed because several Liga MX clubs stood up and fiercely opposed it. Now Fifantino is taking advantage of the post-World Cup buzz, handing out cash payouts to various national federations, and trying to ram this through the back door under a clever disguise, right? We are talking about bribes repackaged as a democratic vote. They stopped him dead in his tracks, but the real story is what happens next, and you can bet the mainstream media will not tell you a single word of it. Right now, they are all distracted talking about Colo Azcárraga's league and the endless debate over promotion and relegation. But hey, if you have made it this far with me, my friend, do yourself a huge favor and subscribe to this channel. Smash that like button right now and help us out because this upcoming football season is going to be absolutely wild. Naturally, every battle has two sides, but instead of being intimidating, the corrupt puppets defending Infantino and begging for his survival are honestly just a massive, hilarious joke because it is becoming painfully obvious just how far these compromised federations, like the puppet show run by Colo Azcárraga, are willing to sink just to secure a few extra dirty dollars, showing that even a cheap pair of worn-out underwear has far more dignity than their entire league. And keep in mind that other Televisa employee running Liga MX already declared that bringing back promotion and relegation to Mexico is completely impossible. But we will dive deep into that disaster in another upcoming video. Every single federation that allied with this Voldemort clan is driven strictly by their own selfish personal interests. Just look at the Argentine Football Association, releasing a pathetic statement that practically kissed Infantino's feet and shamelessly sucked up to him, boldly claiming that the president sparked a profound transformation within FIFA, built entirely on transparent governance and deep respect for administrative structures to elevate the sport on the pitch. The real question is, when did Argentina care about transparency, and how cynical can Chiqui Tapia actually be? But he is far from the only spineless sellout in this game. Beyond the massive financial rewards sought by the African Confederation to secure for funding, they were also one of the biggest winners in the expansion to 48 teams for the 2026 World Cup. And there is a very specific interest brewing in Morocco. Rabat, the historic Moroccan capital, was selected as the perfect host city for an emergency summit, involving a few highly select members of the FIFA. It was even leaked that Infantino allegedly promised that the historic World Cup final would be played in Casablanca, the absolute commercial and economic heart of Morocco, a claim that was naturally denied in an official statement later. But have you actually stopped to ask yourself why this incredibly high-stakes, high-classified meeting took place deep in Morocco instead of Switzerland, where the official permanent headquarters of FIFA are actually located? So watch closely, because in 2027, that African nation will hold elections to choose a new president, or simply hand Gianni Infantino another term. That is exactly why he is so heavily invested, coddling Morocco to keep them firmly in his corner when election time comes around again. But in this whole saga, nobody kisses up more than the private media empire Cuyo Visa and its unpaid spineless puppets. They constantly defend their boss's choice to stand shoulder to shoulder with the current FIFA administration, proving, once again, that they will gladly sell out to the highest bidder. Pay attention to what comes next, because it gets incredibly messy, and you will never see this on mainstream Mexican media. Traditional television networks. Let us be clear, nothing here happens by chance. To explain it, we have to go back to FIFA Gate. That was when not a single executive from the Mexican Football Federation faced punishment for corruption and bribing high-ranking FIFA officials to secure broadcasting rights for the next 4 World Cups. 3 of those tournaments have already been played, 2022 and 2026. Only 2030 remains, where the boss Azcárraga sits right on the list of suspects being investigated for fraud. The foolish Decio de Maria and the pathetic Justino Campeon aligned themselves in 2013 with the MLS president at the time, Sunil Gulati, and CONCACAF, begging them to step in so the Mexicans could avoid an investigation in the United States. Besides, they loved raking in US dollars, not caring if their national team and domestic clubs abandoned the prestigious Copa Libertadores, the Copa Sudamericana, and the Copa America just to swear loyalty to worthless, second-rate CONCACAF tournaments. Back then, the corporate boss essentially doomed Mexican football just to secure broadcasting rights and break into the lucrative American market, since the national team almost always plays there. But surprise, surprise, CONCACAF wants absolutely nothing to do with this clown anymore, hitting him right where it hurts most. A few months ago, Victor Montagliani's CONCACAF sold the broadcast rights for the next 2 Gold Cups and the Nations League Final Four to Netflix for triple the price. The streaming giant paid $60 million, while an incredibly cheap Televisa could only scrape together 20 million greenbacks to put on the table. That is why CONCACAF dumped them. Now, curiously enough, since being on that side of the fence no longer suits their interests, they are trying to pull the Mexican national team out of the deal so they cannot be broadcast on Netflix. And this is exactly where the scheme to join CONMEBOL comes in. It is completely fake, of course, but it allows the boss Azcárraga to strike a deal with Argentina to broadcast the Copa America and start raking in profits again, knowing nobody exploits the national team like them, leaving without paying a single cent. The key factor is Infantino securing re-election as FIFA president. As a favor, he would help Televisa FC and all its followers migrate over to CONMEBOL, but CONCACAF still has them completely by the balls because they need their approval to leave the Confederation, plus the fine print that Azcárraga and his cronies signed to save their own skin during FIFA Gate back in 2013, making an exit practically impossible. Mexico is the biggest cash cow CONCACAF has across all its tournaments, and there is no way they will let them walk away. This is a critical moment, because the trash media and FIFA will try to convince you their intentions are pure. They will keep repeating that joining forces with CONMEBOL is exactly what Mexican football needs right now. But let me ask you, if they care so much about the sport, Why do they not bring back promotion and relegation? Why did they not do it years ago? Why only now, when they have lost control of the national team broadcasting rights, are they suddenly so desperate to act? Are you really going to believe the same old garbage media outlets? Opponents are trying to block Infantino from reaching the March 2027 vote, dragging all his dirty laundry into the open, including a massive affair scandal. An investigation by The Telegraph revealed that back when the corrupt Infantino worked for UEFA, eventually rising to the position of general secretary, he promoted his mistress from an administrative job to a director role, handing her a 30% raise so that, according to reports, she took home roughly €171,000 annually, a classic case of corruption, favoritism, and cronyism. Once they got caught, Infantino cut her loose but compensated her through UEFA with a massive, multi-million-dollar severance package, plus a master's degree with tuition costing €52,519. Infantino was already buying his way to the absolute top with bribes and influence peddling, and yet nobody dared to stop him. Even though a spokesperson for both FIFA and UEFA scrambled to flatly deny these heavy accusations, they did confirm the woman was fired and her tuition was paid using organizational funds, though they completely refused to acknowledge any sort of romantic affair. But exposing these cheap, underhanded antics of Infantino is really just child play compared to what is coming next. The ultimate master plan and UEFA's secret ace up their sleeve to completely bring him down was slowly, very carefully cooked up during the high-stakes Super Cup final match between Paris Saint-Germain and Aston Villa. And it all really boils down to one very simple, incredibly crucial question. What would actually happen if UEFA and their powerful astronauts do not just block Infantino from getting re-elected, but instead completely rewrite the rules of the game? And to keep any future president from gathering too much unchecked authority over the years, they decided to rotate the presidency across all the different continental confederations. On top of this, over in the United States, prosecutors have officially reactivated the massive, infamous FIFA Gate scandal, where the American Department of Justice is absolutely refusing to back down from prosecuting the accused. And one of their main targets is the boss of the useless Emilio Azcárraga. Some power players in Mexico are already sweating bullets, pacing their offices because they have absolutely no idea what is about to happen to Infantino, and Azcárraga desperately needs Infantino to win re-election to keep those backroom favors alive. Because of that, they are going to feed the fans a new script, insisting it is vital to back Azcárraga's sudden move to jump ship to CONMEBOL, which is complete smoke and mirrors, a quiet scam. Meanwhile, UEFA is biting at the bit to throw Infantino out, a deeply corrupt, shadowy figure who is desperately hoping he can somehow convince the majority of voters to secure his re-election. If he does win that re-election, Infantino will consolidate massive power, and a brutal, ruthless witch hunt will immediately begin. Should UEFA, the AFC, and CONCACAF win, major changes are coming. The very soul of football would be preserved, and they would basically abort their desperate mission to stay permanently glued to the Americans. That is exactly how the business of global football is run. Drop your thoughts in the comments below and let us know how you think this massive soap opera is going to unfold. For now, the battle lines are drawn. We will keep tracking this chaotic story as it unfolds, so stay tuned for the next major update. Goodbye.